with Southern Miss, a team that I think is really interesting. One of the things, and this is just kind of, a brief intro for those who may need a quick refresher. Of course, Southern Miss went 3-7 last year. The unfortunate start for them with the head coaching change. Jay Hopson was fired, relieved of his duties after a disappointing loss to South Alabama in the season opener. But when you go back and you look at that schedule, guys, they lost 3 games by less than a score. They had a 1-point loss, I believe it was to Louisiana Tech, 3-point loss early, a 2-point loss early in the year, then a 3-point loss late in the year as well. So you flip those games their way, that goes from a 3-7 to potentially 6-4 right there. And you also got to take into account with just the fact that there's a team that had 3 head coaches, Scotty Walden, Tim Billings, and then Jay Hopson, and COVID. That and of course a young team, Jason Brownlee, a JUCO kid coming in, Frank Gore Jr., a true freshman, wasn't exactly, the most stable situation. So don't take that, the last year's, kind of records 3-7 and think, all right, there's going to be a Conference USA also ran. So with that being said, fellas, let's go and talk about the quarterback situation. T. Webb, the backup coming transfer in from Louisville. Steve, kind of what are your thoughts on T. Webb? And of course, we'll talk about, someone who appears at this point in time to kind of be the potential starter. And then Sanoe, I'll let you kind of follow up with where Steve leaves off.
Yeah. So one thing just to add what you were talking about last season, about every school had, difficulties they had to go through, but Jack Abraham, I don't even know if he played half the season, right? So he missed a lot of the games too.
Correct.
So that wasn't this factor into Southern Miss. T. Webb. So this is someone that we've talked about probably maybe a few episodes ago. We talked some Southern Miss football, the transfer from Louisville, who, you weren't able to see anything at Louisville because he was a backup. But when he was in high school, he was someone who was a good 3-star recruit, had signs that he could be developed, has tools to develop. It's just find that right system. And so I'm going to reference the To the Top Talk podcast. They have they gave us some feedback about the spring game and how T. Webb looked. And here's what they said. They kind of talked about his mechanics, about being maybe a potential concern, but they said he has a good frame, certainly has potential. The way he throws the ball could be a little problematic if there is a threat coming around the edge. They said it's almost like a slingshot motion. They said similar to the way Doug Flutie used to sling it. So kind of good insight for him. To the Top Talk. I think we're at the spring game, we're able to kind of give us the feedback. Regardless with T. Webb, though, he seems to be like the number 2 guy right now, according to everything. But this is his first semester at Southern Miss. He has tools, has potential, new head coach. So the fact that he can be developed is still encouraging. I think that quarterback room isn't going to have a drop-off at all from the Jack Abraham days of 2018, 2019. I think they could take a step forward, which we'll get to eventually because of Will Hall, the offense he's bringing in.
Yeah, and just to add to that, so I've heard a lot through Sippy's Sports Show, and if you don't know about Sippy's Sports Show, he does a YouTube coverage of Southern Miss and kind of does what I do for UNT, but for Southern Miss, and he made it out to the spring game, and his comments, again, on Treylow, it's just pretty apparent that he's going to be the guy, and, you can't help but think, and Steven, I'm sure you have some input on this, but the game reps that he surprisingly got with Jack Abraham leaving, halfway through the season can only make him better. I know speaking from my, Julius Pepper days myself, that my game reps helped. But in all seriousness, he's coming in with probably the most in-game experience. I don't think he got that much at West Virginia. And I know T. Webb didn't get any, as a true freshman at Louisville. So, or I don't believe he did. And if he did, and if he in fact did, it probably wasn't meaningful. So I think it's just he's head and shoulders above everyone else, and T. Webb, with his upside is, the obvious second we think. But what's interesting to me is Will Hall's recruit coming in, the true freshman Ty Keese, and I don't know how much you guys know about him, but he's a 3-star. He's pretty highly rated. I think 24/7 Composite has him at an 87 rating or something like that. Was originally committed to Tulane, but when Will Hall got hired at Southern Miss, he flipped and came with the Will Hall because he wanted to go with his offense and all that. And, he held big offers, from Auburn, Nebraska, Ole Miss, I think Mississippi State. I mean, he had a lot of offers. So not that I think he's going to come in as a true freshman and challenge Treylow, who's I think year 4. I believe he's year 4 as far as college football goes. But it'll just be interesting to have someone of that talent. I think he's the highest rated Conference USA quarterback in this 21 signing class, if I'm not mistaken. I don't know if you know anybody else quarterback-wise, Eric, that's more highly rated than him in this 21 class or not, but I believe he's the highest. But yeah, I think it's going to be Treylow, and as far as the quarterbacks go. So, but it'll be interesting, to see how that'll fit with Will Hall's offense.
I'll send it back to Steve real quick. Just touch on the points that Sanoe is making there. Yes, Ty Keys is the highest rated quarterback. Believe Grayson James is second FIU's recruit, and then also yes, Treylow is in his fourth year. He did a year at West Virginia, 2 years at Southern Miss, so he'll be entering his fourth year of college football. So, Steve, really quick, want to get your thoughts on this. Just in terms of a fit in Will Hall's system. Treylow is someone who's definitely going to look to move the pocket, use his legs, but also certainly a very capable passer. What type of fit do you think that is from that perspective, and someone who, really had the most success out of any Southern Miss quarterback? While Jack Abraham did play the majority of the season, in terms of the win column, Treylow certainly had his success.
Yeah, and the thing about Treylow was, he beat one of the best Conference USA defenses in FA.
Correct.
That was his best game by far. They put up, I know that I probably mentioned this in the podcast before because I lost a lot of money being a degenerate gamble that I am. I had the under, and of course the under was gone the first quarter. But anyways, that's neither here nor there. But Treylow, and he's someone we've talked about before in the podcast, what he showed in that game, that tool set fits Will Hall's offensive system, I think, to a T. I think if you just go look at Michael Pratt from Tulane, and you see that Pratt has the ability to run the ball, but it's not his first choice. Same with Treylow. I think he has the ability to run the ball. He's probably a better athlete than Michael Pratt, too, and probably has a better arm, too. So he's able to push it downfield a bit more. But Michael Pratt had a lot of success in Will Hall's offense at Tulane. He's only a freshman. Treylow has his whole spring to develop under that. This is his first. We mentioned this last time talking about Treylow. This is Treylow's first full offseason in football because he had baseball before, then COVID last year. And so he's actually finally being able to develop as opposed to just relying on pure talent and raw ability alone. So he's developing as an actual quarterback. And before I throw it back to you, Eric, a quick quote from, again, To the Top podcast about Treylow from the spring game was this. He's a clear number one right now. Looked to be a solid combination of accuracy, arm, strength, and athletic ability. Lowe was able to make some plays with his feet whenever the pocket broke down. So I think the fact that, yes, he can run, but it's not the center of his game. But Will Hall surrounds a dual threat quarterback. His offense is surrounded, or it's better when it's a dual threat quarterback. That's only going to elevate Treylow's game, I feel like. And so I think, just like texting before, I think we're both pretty bullish on Treylow. So if someone's in the stock market, I would buy on Treylow right now before it's midway through the season.
Absolutely. And the reason I, led in terms of talking about Southern Miss and the fact that they had a few kind of near misses there, or near wins, I should say, not near misses, near wins in terms of a few close games, is the fact that this is a team that conceivably could turn things around very quickly. Will Hall comes in with a very dynamic offense. The talent is there. Frank Gore Jr., arguably one of the top freshmen in CUSA. Jason Brownlee, the JUCO All-American who came in and led Conference USA in yards per catch, I believe it was 19.6, if memory serves correct off the top of my head. So Southern Miss, definitely, a situation to keep an eye on. And if Treylow is able to establish himself as the starter coming out of spring, that at least gives him the entire fall to really kind of hone in and see where things go. And I'll get a chance to watch Treylow in person when FIU heads to Southern Miss, heads to Hattiesburg. So I'll get a chance to watch him in person. That should be intriguing. Let's talk about the Panthers here. A situation where if you have, 4 quarterbacks, do you have one? That's kind of a FIU situation there. Just a quick refresher for those who may not know. The Panthers coming off an 0-5 season. Saw multiple cancellations due to COVID and, other restrictions. Sometimes, it was FIU side, sometimes the other team side. But the fact of the matter is they only saw 5 games played. They were 121st out of 127 teams in passing offense, just a shade over 122 yards per game through the air. For a team that is not running the wishbone, that's not exactly fruitful coming from the passing game. So quarterback situation right here. Right now, you kind of have what looks to be a 3-man race. We'll talk about Grayson James in a second, and we'll go to Sanoe for his background as far as Grayson James and seeing what he's done out of the state of Texas. But the guys who are in camp right now, Max Bortenschlager, Kalen Wiggins, and Hayden Carlson. Steve, you've had a chance to see Bortenschlager and Wiggins over the past 2 years. Just want to take it away. I'll let you take it with your quick thoughts on that, and then we'll come back and touch on Hayden in a second.
Yeah, so I think with both of them, it was like judging them based off last year, I think is probably a bit unfair in a way. I don't know if you agree with that. Obviously they struggled, but it wasn't an advantageous position by any means that they were in. But I think I'm just going to call him Max because I can't pronounce the last name. There, I'll let you keep pronouncing his last name. But I think Max was what you're going to be more of a. I'm not comparing him to James Morgan by any means, but he's going to be more that style. He's that pocket passer. He's a true pocket passer, wants to stay in and rip it. Or Wiggins, he has a good arm. He can actually spin it better than people probably realize, but he's more known for his athletic ability and able to get trying to get to the edge and make plays with his legs. So two different style of quarterbacks, completely two different guys as far as tool set. So it's interesting as far as like what's going to happen with the system and what they're going to mold or lead one way to.
So, Noe, I want to go ahead and come to you on Grayson James. He was very highly touted. Excuse me, I shouldn't say was. He is very highly touted coming out of high school. He is not an early enrollee, so he's not with the program just yet, finishing up his high school academic career, but, is the highest rated quarterback signee in the history of the program. Of course, the second highest rated is Hayden Carlson, who's in camp now, but I digress. From Grayson James' perspective, what should FIU fans look for in terms of talent, especially coming from a quarterback-rich state such as Texas?
Yeah, so Grayson James, he was in North Texas's backyard, being that he's coming out of Duncanville, and I wish we would have gotten in the mix on that. He's a very highly rated 3-star QB, and he had his Dartmouth offers, his Columbia's offers, so he's obviously a smart kid.
Sure.
It's obviously what we're getting at there. And I think he's a tremendous, and I really mean this factually, no disrespect. I really don't know why he chose FIU, other than maybe they're becoming somewhat of a quarterback school,
Sure.
as far as the G5 goes, just because he's, so well. So I think there's a lot to be excited about. However, and I have a personal philosophy anyway, as far as a true freshman probably won't come in, and really compete for reps. But as far as down the stretch goes, because Max, how do you say his last name?
Believe it or not, guys, it's actually not that hard. You don't look at it, just say it. It's Bortenschlager.
Okay, it sounds like a beer to me. So
of course.
Is he going into his senior year?
Max Bortenschlager is actually will be his graduate year. So he would have been a fifth-year senior last year, if my memory serves me correct, because he got his significant playing time at Maryland in 2017, but was with the program in 2016. So 16, 17, 18, 19, 25, 20, 21, 6. There you go.
Okay, yeah. So like we're saying, Schwarzenegger, this is his last year, and probably anyway. As long as there's not any, super years granted. So I think year 2 that Grayson James is one of those guys who could potentially come in as a redshirt freshman and really produce potentially, and maybe be a guy that they can build around as far as in these next recruiting classes. The 22 class and 23 and but I mean, I think it's a great pickup. I really do. I'm openly jealous that you guys got him out of our backyard.
Yeah, really quick. I think it's an interesting point you make there, Sanoe, as far as listen, I don't think it's controversial to ask how does a team that's 0-5 and FIU, a program that doesn't necessarily have a long-standing history of college football, really they're going into their 19th year of football as is, and then not really a history of winning. How do they get such a highly touted quarterback? I think you really got to give the credit to Bryn Renner, the former North Carolina quarterback, is known as being a very charismatic, energetic guy, one of the more talented recruiters as far as FIU staff is concerned. And I believe from the intel that I have that was his primary recruiter. So that would obviously have played a huge factor. And we obviously, with Grayson still being in high school, we haven't had a chance to talk to him yet. So hopefully I can give you a more definitive answer, but I would think that, kind of that the Bryn Renner factor. If you get in a room with Bryn, you can't help but, feel the energy. He was coaching cornerbacks the past 2 years, and Stanley Thomas Oliver, who's now cornerback of the Carolina Panthers, nicknamed him the Energy Man. So that kind of gives you, the idea of who he is. Steve, really quick, want to come back to Hayden Carlson's kind of the wild card here in terms of the quarterback situation, someone who is a highly touted prospect in his own right, son of former NFL quarterback Jeff Carlson, out of my neck of the woods, my backyard, the Tampa Bay area here. Want to ask you this, and obviously I'm not asking you to have broken down a ton of film on him, because really what you would have is from high school, but want to get into two things here. One, when you're talking about a redshirt freshman, right, someone who's been in the program for a year, how much of a leg up does that give him over say, a true freshman coming in? And then B, what do you make of the quote from Butch Davis when he said, and this was at signing day, when Butch Davis said, if we had played a full season, there's a fair possibility that Hayden Carlson would have started a game or two or three down the stretch.
Yeah. So to answer your first question, just from you telling me about Coach Butch Davis, he doesn't blow smoke, so that's pretty high praise. It feels like for a freshman quarterback. It probably helps that their quarterbacks are struggling last year, so they're looking for their options. But back to kind of the first point, I think it does give you a leg up as far as you understand how a college, not just college football program, but how college is ran to begin with, your tutor schedule, your 16 hours per week or whatever the hours is scheduled, and then you add your 20 hours a week of football on top of that, and then whatever that is, 6 hours in the off season, whatever all the hours are. But learning how to just kind of like balance it and juggle it. I mean, we all played college football very, very unsuccessfully. But we all know like that first week or something just hits you in the face. You're like, holy hell, like, how do I do all this? And so maybe it's because I was immature at the time. And Grayson James probably has a better head on his shoulders than I had. But it definitely helped. You understand the system. You understand how things roll. So I think it helps big time initially. But then I think, Grayson James, a smart quarterback who's polished and has been in Texas, for a while. So he's going to come in and probably pick it up pretty quickly. But Hayden Carlson is a talent, though. He's a talented quarterback who shouldn't be overlooked right now.
It's interesting. And I'm going to come back to Sanoe really quick. I want to lean on his experience here. I want to throw a question his way here. I've asked you this question, but I want to toss to him. But I think it's really going to be interesting, right? Because we've talked a lot. We've joked off air about Texas quarterbacks, right? And how they're kind of, a cut above the rest. Well, I think we're going to get a chance to find out. And I don't necessarily want to say to pit, Grayson versus Hayden, but Hayden's a very physically gifted guy. Obviously, great bloodlines with his dad playing in the NFL, but Florida's not a state that's known for quarterbacks. That's not necessarily, a shock, right? So I think we're going to get a chance to really see, can Grayson come in, hit the ground running, because he's been playing in a state in which it's a toss-up as to whether you think the football is better. I'm going to be outnumbered 2-1 here on that, front. But in terms of the quarterback play, I won't sit here and try to take anything away from Texas quarterbacks. So, Noy, want to ask you this. I've asked Steve this question many times. Just want to get your quick thoughts on it. If you have, I think it's one thing if you have two quarterbacks competing for a job. If you have 3 and 4 quarterbacks, when Grayson gets in, conceivably, do you, in your opinion, you really think you can adequately split those reps up, even if it's spring? And I want to lead you with this. So Butch Davis, when we had a chance to talk on Monday, has said that he's giving all the quarterbacks reps with the 1s, 2s, and 3s, and they're evenly splitting, whether it's 7 on 7s, 11 on 11s, blitz pickup, whatever it may be. He's splitting it 1/3, each a third. How true or false that is, media's not allowed at practice, so I couldn't tell you. But just want to get your thoughts on, do you really think you can kind of make that work?
So with 3 or with 4?
Well, let's start with 3 first, okay. And then, when Grayson comes in before.
Yeah. So I think with 3, obviously just it's one less, so maybe it's a slightly, more realistic that you could work 3 in. But I think pretty quick as far as spring ball goes, maybe as far as 3 practices in, you're probably already weeding down 1, sure. As far as I'm going to work these 2. And, I guess I don't really know if this answers your question accurately, but I don't think they're going all spring splitting 3 even, like splitting the reps equally 3 ways, if that makes any sense. But I do think they probably try their best, as far as early on, and then just kind of okay, this guy's not going to work. Let's just move on to these 2, and this guy just seems to click above, so let's focus on that one. So I guess it could be done for a few days, for a short period of time, but once it gets to a certain point, then I feel like they would feel that they're wasting their time, because they know only one can really contribute essentially, and I guess not technically, but theoretically that's ideal. And we kind of lived through that at UNT this past year, so
right.
You definitely want to have a guy getting the lion's share of the reps, I would feel like, pretty swiftly into spring football.
And that's, to be honest with you, Sanoe, that's part of why I asked you, because you saw the situation with UNT. And of course, we're going to transition to UNT right now, but you saw the situation with Jason Bean and Austin Ani. So it's hard to believe that you can adequately, whether it's practice reps, I don't care if it's during the year, spring, at some point in time, you got to start prepping, one guy to be the starter. and then you got to, kind of prep the other guys to run scout team and whatnot. So that's why I want to go ahead and get your perspective on that. But that gives us a perfect segue to talk Mean Green here. So I'm going to let you lead it off here and just kind of give us an update on what the quarterback situation is there. Steve and I have talked a lot as far as about, Jason Bean really surprising us as far as just how athletic he is.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's one of the one things that, kind of disappointed to see him leave, because he is not just athletic for a quarterback. He's athletic for athlete across the board, no matter what sport you play. But, with Austin, Ani, and of course, Jace Ruder. So go and bring us up to speed with what's going on there at UNT.
Yeah. So, obviously Jason Bean is heading to Kansas now, and, it's never ideal for someone, the transfer portal gives and takes away, right? So it's never ideal for you to see one of your co-starting QBs of the past season leave, and the quarterback that was the starter for your bowl game, transfer out. But however, looking at it from the glass half full, it's like, well, we know who's getting the reps now in spring, and that's obviously Austin Ani. And so I think there's almost some bittersweetness there, because when they were both there, none of them really separated themselves from each other for too long of a time. We may have a few games where, okay, these few weeks Jason Bean's the guy, but then Jason Bean, messes up, let's pull Ani back in. He's the guy for a few weeks, and he missed. So now that they have to go with one of those two, I feel like it makes that person better. And obviously our quarterback as of now, as it sits today, post spring, it's Austin Ani. I mean, there's no one's there as challenging as far as this year. And, I was able to make it to the spring game, and it wasn't a true spring game. They have their ones going against the twos and vice versa as far as offense and defense. And it's kind of hard to, gauge things when you have your number one offense going against your second defense. But, Ani looked, he looked much improved from last year, which should be expected. That's his first year, playing a lot of meaningful reps. And, so he looks a lot better. And we'll see, obviously, when Jace Ruder comes to town, how that competition will shake out. And kind of to ask that question back to you guys in a way, how do you feel like they do that with Jace Ruder? Do they jump him in the line to, like, okay, we know Ani's our guy. Are we just going to have Ani and Ruder battle it out now, or are we going to make Ruder climb the depth chart to number 2? Does that make sense?
Sure. Steve, I'll let you have at it first.
Yeah, I would imagine that they give him 2 reps right off the bat, and then at some point after the 2 reps, I'm sure he's getting some 1 reps. It might look something like, because I would doubt they name Austin Ani the starting quarter, unless they already did. Did they name him the starting quarterback after the spring game? Because if it's still open, then they have room to have like 80% reps go to Ani, throw in 10% reps or 20% reps with the ones to Ruder. So I would imagine, so, as long as it's still open, then it could be the start of fall camp is 80%, 20%, 75, 25%, whatever it may be. And then Ruder can kind of has to take the bull by the horn, or take the reps that he gets to kind of transition to potentially being the guy. But I'm in line with you. I think Ani has potential to develop and to get better. And, maybe UNT will, be above 500 this year or something. Sanoe, I don't know, but shoot.
We should be we should be.
The thing that UNT has to figure out is old defense. Third defensive coordinator as many years. At least they've got guys like Dion Noville and other guys coming back. But they're gonna have to keep opponents off the scoreboard. I'm gonna quickly touch on Sanoe's point really quick. This is kind of my experience with it and covering FIU in 2018 with the James Morgan Christian Alexander dynamic. I think very quickly whether you have a guy or you don't. For those who may not remember, while Morgan ended up being an NFL quarterback, is now with the Jets, ended up having a great career at FIU. It was actually Christian who was there prior and had started a few games, actually going back to the time when Alex Magoo, another NFL quarterback, was there, and had all of the summer, all of spring, because James Morgan didn't get there until after summer, to establish himself, right? And I feel, Sanoe, to answer your question, if Austin Ani's established himself, then you'll know you have a guy, right? And Jace Ruder will come in, and he'll get his reps. And if something wows you, like, oh, okay, I think we got something there, then maybe, you give him a rep or two and like, all right, maybe this might, cause reevaluate things. But if you're solid in who you have, and we'll have to see if Seth Luttrell is, then there's nothing, in my opinion, that Jace Ruder can come in and do to really shake that. I saw that with James Morgan. He started the opening game against Indiana. James went 9 of 20. I'll never forget the stat line as long as I live. 9 of 20 for 88 yards, 1 touchdown, 1 pick, had a fumble. You would think right there, all right, We've got this guy who we've seen for, a summer and has been to the program a couple of years. This transfer we brought in, it ain't working. We might have to go back to the other guy. No, Butch Davis stuck to his guns, knew what he had, put James Morgan out there, and the rest is history. So I think that's the best way you can answer that question. In the few minutes we have remaining, so I want to ask you this really quickly about UNT. What's the feeling there with Seth Luttrell? Has kind of the shine worn off a little bit? Because I feel like it got to a quick start, but things have kind of faded the last little bit. So just some quick thoughts on Seth Luttrell. I think it'd be cool to get that in.
Yeah, so definitely it was really good, really fast, and there was a big scare that he was going to go to, I think, Kansas State, I think after the 2018 year, and
right.
He ultimately didn't, which we were all relieved, we were happy, and then 2019 wasn't what we expected, and we all know what 2020 was for us. Was very, it was a tough year. So the feelings, it's pretty mixed, and I would say it's mixed, but people they're a fan of him. He's a great recruiter. He's done a lot of good things for this program. Obviously, it's not where we want to be as fans. And being that the recruiting classes that we've brought in recent years, as far as Conference USA goes, we're, 1 and 2 I think we're 2 the last 2 years. And so we got that has to translate to the field, sooner than later. But, he has brought us to a bowl game. Granted, some of them were kind of give me bowls based on like academic success or COVID or whatever. But, we've been to a bowl game every year with him, except for the 2019 year. We haven't won any of those bowl games, granted. So, if you haven't looked at our schedule yet for 2021, it's tough. It's very tough. We got Marshall, Liberty, Missouri, SMU. We got quite the gauntlet. La Tech, all in the beginning. It's very front heavy. So if he can go 6-6 with this schedule and make it to a bowl game and win, I think he's getting renewed, and we're all going to be pretty okay. That's good. Let's keep this momentum going. So it's mixed, but we want to see him succeed. I don't think anybody's really – I know there's a few, but I don't think anybody's cheering for his demise or like, let's get him out of here just because of, the thing. He's brought a lot of good stuff here. But it's got to translate. We can't have losing seasons being located in North Texas where this recruiting just, garden around us.
Yeah, absolutely. Definitely felt it was crucial to get that in really quick because under Seth Luttrell, the offense has really been dynamic, since his arrival in Denton. But that's going to bring us to a close here with this edition of the QB Spotlight podcast. As always, you can find us on Twitter at QB Spotlight. You can find Steve on Twitter at Steven, STEVEN, Hamner, HAMNER. You can find me on Twitter at Eric C. Henry _. You can find Sanoe on Twitter at Mean Green Show. And of course, check them out on YouTube as well, Mean Green Show. You can find this podcast on YouTube, search QB Spotlight. And Steve, really quick, outside of your various podcasting platforms, but specifically Apple Podcasts, where else can you find this podcast?
Check out us on Draft Diamonds, NFLDraftDiamonds.com, or at Draft Diamonds on Instagram and Twitter.
All right, everyone, happy football watching. The next podcast we're hoping to have is going to be a little bit of we're going to do kind of our Gruden QB camp, except it's going to be Steve's QB camp. We're going to put Steve on the board. We're going to break down some film, kind of do some cool things. Definitely go ahead and check it out on YouTube. We will have the content cranking out for you throughout the spring and summer. So happy football watching, everyone. Stay safe. And looks like we will be getting back to normal pretty soon. So stay safe out there, everyone.